Chapter 4. Hooked. Barry stared at the rusty old hook, unable to believe his eyes. I can't believe this is here, he thought. The hook was a huge clue, and he'd found it. Just like the twin detectives in his books, only it was real. He lifted the hook from the box carefully, feeling how heavy it was in his hands. He touched the tip with his thumb. Ouch, he muttered, flinching back. Blood bloomed on his skin. He stared at it in surprise. The hook was still sharp, as if it hadn't aged a day, even though it had clearly been hidden down there for a long time. How is that possible? Thankfully, he'd had a tetanus shot last year after stabbing his toe on a rusty nail while playing in Michael's backyard, which was practically a homemade junkyard. Did it actually belong to Captain Hook? Barry wondered. He examined the initials carved into the top of the box again, feeling the deep indentations in the polished wood. C.J.H. Captain James Hook, he whispered, believing what the tour guide had said. Unbelievable! How has this stayed hidden for so long? He felt around the inside of the box for more clues. A corner of the velvet lining seemed to have come unglued from the box. Strange, Barry thought, sliding his fingers underneath it. They brushed something hidden behind the lining, excited. He peeled the red velvet back more, exposing a piece of parchment paper. He pried the paper from the box. It looked like a secret letter. It was sealed with a red wax stamp. He peeled off the wax stamp and unfolded the parchment. It looked old, like super duper old. His eyes scanned the ornate cursive. I'm hiding my hook from that scurvy brat. As if taking my hand wasn't enough, now he wants my hook too. Whoever possesses my hook will have the power to never grow up. Keep it safe until I finally get my revenge one day. Captain James Hook. Chills rushed through Barry from head to toe, bringing goosebumps to his skin. It did belong to Captain Hook. But who was the scurvy brat? Barry didn't know. He scanned the letter again, rereading the part about the power to never grow up. I could stay a kid forever, he whispered to himself, feeling his heart pump faster with excitement. He thought about his upcoming 12th birthday, an elementary school graduation, and all the homework that he didn't want to do waiting for him at home. It was only going to get worse when he got to junior high school. He remembered Rita and her recent 16th birthday, and how ever since then their parents and her teachers kept piling more work and responsibility on her, not to mention algebra. He still didn't know what that was exactly, only that it sounded horrible. He also thought about his parents, who always seemed so stressed out about their jobs or worried about paying bills. Being an adult was even worse than being a teenager. The older you got, he realized, the harder everything became. Barry ran his finger over the hook, feeling the cold metal. Then he glanced at the letter again. It tempted him. Never grow up. But still, he hesitated. For starters, taking things that didn't belong to you was wrong. Not to mention this was a historical museum, which meant that the hook was a piece of that history. It belonged in a museum. What would his father think if he found out that his son had stolen a historical artifact? Guilt pulled in his heart. He knew that it was wrong to take it. Very, very wrong. But none of that could temper his desire for his greatest wish. I want to stay a kid forever, Barry whispered to the hook. And it was true. That was what he most desired in this world. He glanced around the cabin to make sure that nobody was watching, but the cabin was still empty. No one had come looking for him. He wondered if they'd even realized he was gone. With a deep breath to steel his nerves, he slipped the hook, along with the letter, into his backpack and zipped it up. Thump, thump. It sounded like heavy footsteps again. The ship rocked suddenly, and Barry lurched forward. He stumbled to his knees and braced himself. What was that? Out of the corner of his eye, he saw something move behind the tarps draped over the walls. The dark silhouette flashed past his vision. Barry's stomach flipped. For a split second, he thought he was in trouble, and someone had caught him stealing the hook. But then he came to his senses. It was probably just a wave hitting the ship, he told himself, even though his heart was still jackhammering in his chest. It must have made the tarp sway so that the shadows played a trick on his eyes. He was just seeing things again. Taking a steadying breath, Barry pulled his backpack on. The weight of the hook inside settled on his shoulders. A satisfied smile crept over his face. He'd found a solution to his greatest problem. Now he never had to grow up. But wait, what if it doesn't work? What if this is just some prank? Barry hesitated. Should he put the hook back? But then, worst case scenario, Barry would have a cool pirate hook to show off to his friends. And not just any hook. One that belonged to the infamous pirate captain, and he had the letter to prove it. So they'd have to believe him. Michael and John would totally geek out over the hook. They could play pirates in their secret Lost Boys hideout in Michael's backyard. Thump, thump. That noise. The boat rocked under his feet. His stomach twisted. And then there was that shadow again, moving behind the tarps. There, and then gone. Barry blinked hard and then stared at the wall. Nothing. Everything was still. It must have been his imagination. It tended to be overactive. Just ask his teachers. All the creepy pirate stories and being on a pirate ship could be messing with him too. Outside the windows, the sun was starting to set, casting the cabin into half darkness. He needed to get back soon, or his parents would start to worry. The tour was probably about to end, and soon the museum would close too. He turned to leave, but then, thump, thump, thump. This time it was unmistakably footsteps. Heavy ones. The cabin grew even colder, making him shiver. He spun around in a panic. Who's there? Barry called out, even though he knew nobody could be in the cabin with him. That would have been impossible. Surely he would have heard the heavy door opening. The hinges squealed something awful. He listened hard, but silence descended over the cabin again. He shook his head and chuckled to himself. Wow, I'm such a scaredy cat, he muttered under his breath, thankful his friends weren't here to witness it. What would the twin detectives in his books think? But then, thump, 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 thump. Barry felt a rush of fear surge through him. He'd had enough. He had to get out of there. His heart hammering, he turned and bolted toward the door, fleeing from the strange noise.